Human, you are so kind.
The first thing I noticed about her wasn't her glowing eyes or the way her hair shimmered in the neon lights of the city. It was the fact that she looked offended at gravity itself. "Why are you staring?" she asked, tilting her head, her ears twitching slightly like two antennae that had better things to do than listen to me breathe. "I'm not staring," I lied. "I'm calculating." "Calculating what?" "How your head doesn't tip over with those ears," she gasped, a sound halfway between shock and a squeak. Then she smiled, and that was the problem. When she smiled, all the cynicism of the city's towers and lights just melted off her face. Like snow sliding off chrome. Her name was Lyrie, though she pronounced it with 3 syllables and an extra hum that humans couldn't reproduce. She said it made her sound musical. I told her it made her sound expensive. She liked that. Too much, actually. We'd met that morning in the repair bay of the Skyport, where I worked as a human mechanic for hire. She was the client. Well, technically her ship was. A tiny silver pod with a personality disorder. "It's an empathy reactor," she explained, tapping its hull lovingly. "It reacts to emotions." "So it broke because you felt too much?" I said. "No," she said straight-faced. "It broke because someone looked at it wrong. I wasn't sure if she meant me." All day she hovered around me, literally. The little alien girl's feet barely touched the ground, asking questions, leaning over my tools, and once, almost sticking her fingers in the coolant flow. "Do humans always frown this much when they work?" she asked. "Only when they're working with aliens who touch radioactive circuits." She giggled, a bright melodic sound that didn't belong in an oil-stained hangar. "You worry too much, human." She never called me by name. Just human, like it was a species, a job, and a curse word all at once, by sunset. The repairs were done, but she refused to leave. Instead, she followed me up to the rooftop cafeteria, the one no one used because the wind could blow your lunch halfway to Saturn. She sat across from me, her legs dangling off the chair, chin resting on her hand, watching me eat like I was some kind of exhibit. "You don't blink enough," I told her. "You blink too much," she replied. "Maybe that's why you humans are so nervous. Always hiding behind eyelids. Maybe that's why you aliens get in trouble," I said. "You never blink before jumping into things." She pointed a finger at me. "Exactly why you need me around." "Oh, really? Who else will keep your boring little life interesting?" I wanted to tell her I didn't need her around, that I'd been fine before she floated into my hangar, all sass and starlight. But she said it with such certainty, such teasing affection, that my brain forgot how to argue. Night fell like a neon curtain, the city glowing in impossible colors below. Flying cars hummed by in lazy arcs. The wind carried the scent of ozone and machine oil. Lyrie leaned on the table, eyes reflecting the lights. "You know," she said softly, "on my planet we don't have cities like this. No towers. No loneliness," she replied. That caught me off guard. She said it so simply, I almost didn't catch the sadness under her playful tone. "Sounds nice," I said. It was. Silence settled between us. Not heavy, but curious, like both of us were waiting to see who'd flinch first. Then, she smiled again, that mischievous smile that always meant trouble. "Human," she said. "You look like you need a challenge." "From you?" "I've had enough challenges for a lifetime." "Good," she said. "Then one more won't hurt." She floated up onto the table, balancing perfectly, the city's wind tugging at her long hair. She pointed at my chest. "Tomorrow I'll make you laugh before noon." I raised an eyebrow. "You think you can?" "I don't think," she said, grinning. "I know. But that was the thing about Lyrie. Every time she teased me, there was something beneath it. A flicker of loneliness, a tremor of fear. Like laughter was her armor, and teasing me was her way to feel safe. I didn't realize how serious it was until later that night, when I found her again, sitting exactly where she is now, on the edge of the rooftop rail, legs swinging, staring down at the city lights like they were stars that refused to shine for her. The wind was colder now. Her shoulders were trembling. "You win," I said quietly. "You made me worry before midnight." She didn't turn around at first. Then her voice came soft, small, like it was afraid to exist. "Do humans ever miss their homes?" "Every day," I said. She nodded slowly. "Then maybe I'm a little human too." And just like that, her teasing melted into silence. She didn't look strong or confident or mischievous anymore. Just tiny, just lost. I sat beside her, close enough that the city's hum filled the space between us. For the first time all day, she didn't say anything funny. And for the first time, I didn't try to. When she finally looked up, her eyes shimmered, not from light, but from something far quieter. And in that moment I realized, maybe the only reason she teased me all day was because she didn't know how to ask for comfort. The city never really slept, but it pretended to. After midnight, the neon signs dimmed to a lazy pulse, and the sky bridges hummed like something half alive. I'd just started to drift off on my couch when someone knocked on the door of my workshop apartment. 3 fast taps, 1 long. No one used that rhythm except her. I opened the door, expecting her usual grin. Some snide comment about human sleeping rituals. Instead, Lyrie stood there wrapped in an oversized flight jacket that wasn't hers. Her ears drooped, eyes wide with something that didn't belong on her face. Panic. Human. She whispered. They found me. At first I thought she was exaggerating. Lyrie exaggerated everything. The time a toaster sparked, it's starting a rebellion. The time the air recycler broke, the building is dying. But this was different. She wasn't performing. Behind her, the corridor lights flickered. A security drone floated by, scanning lazily before buzzing off. She flinched anyway. I pulled her inside. Lockdown? Worse, she said, voice trembling. Collectors. Now that got my attention. Collectors were the interplanetary kind of trouble. Corporate bounty hunters who treated debts, lost property, and living beings all the same. What did you do? I asked. Her answer was a whisper. I escaped. She sat on the edge of my couch, knees pulled close, looking like a child trying to hide in a city of glass. The jacket swallowed her whole. Back home, she said slowly. They keep us connected. Our emotions feed the reactors, power the cities. I didn't want to be a battery anymore. I blinked. So you ran, she nodded. And my empathy reactor? The one you fixed? It wasn't just a ship core. It was mine. That explained the way the machine had seemed almost alive, responding to her moods, her laughter. She hadn't been joking earlier. I exhaled, rubbing my face. Lyrie, you realize what this means? If they trace the reactor, they'll trace you. They already did. The knock came again. Not gentle this time, heavy, metallic. I glanced at her. She shook her head violently, mouthing, "Don't answer." The workshop's walls weren't thick enough for secrets. I could hear muffled voices outside. Male, mechanical, and very polite in the way predators sometimes are. Occupant identified, human male. We seek property designation Lyrie 03. Step aside. I turned to her. Property designation? She winced. They don't believe people like me own ourselves. Something in my chest tightened. They're not taking you. I'm not a hero. Never was. I fix ships, not save people. But something about the way her hands shook, tiny, determined, flipped a switch inside me. Back exit, I said. Now. We slipped into the maintenance tunnel behind the workshop. Pipes hissed overhead, dripping condensation. Her bare feet made no sound on the metal grating. She looked up at me as we ran. You don't have to help me. I know, I said. But apparently, I'm not good at ignoring people who make my life complicated. That earned a faint smile through the fear. That's the nicest insult I've ever received. We reached the freight platform overlooking the lower city. From up here, the towers looked like black teeth biting into the clouds. Lyrie touched the railing, her skin pulsing faint blue against the metal. I can jump. Please don't, I said quickly. Not fall, jump. She nodded toward the hover freighters drifting below. I can land on that one, if I time it. I stared at the 100-meter drop. You're insane. Tiny advantage, she said, flexing her small shoulders. Less wind resistance. I couldn't argue with alien physics. Before she leapt, she turned to me, serious now. If they catch you, say you didn't know me. Lyrie, promise me. I didn't. Instead, I grabbed her wrist gently. You still owe me a laugh before noon. That made her eyes soften. Human. The freighter drifted closer. She hesitated just long enough for me to realize she didn't want to go. Then she jumped, graceful, a blur of silver and hair, vanishing into the mist. I barely had time to exhale before the door behind me burst open. 2 collectors strode out, tall and gleaming, faces hidden behind mirrored masks. Unauthorized assistance detected, one said. I raised my hands. She left. Destination, down. Apparently they didn't appreciate sarcasm. One grabbed me by the collar. Her emotional imprint remains. You interfaced with her reactor. She's a friend, not a machine. Everything is a machine, the other replied. I looked over the railing again. Somewhere below, a tiny figure darted between shadows. And suddenly I wasn't scared of these guys. I was furious. Let me guess, I said. You plan to drag her back, plug her into some giant battery, and call it progress? That is not your concern, human. Yeah, well, it just became mine. They didn't expect resistance. Humans rarely fought collectors. We usually complained on forums afterward. But I had tools, wrenches, welders. One impulsive idea. I swung the plasma cutter. Sparks showered. The collector's grip released, leaving scorch marks across his suit. Unwise, the other said. Story of my life, I muttered, and dove over the railing. Wind howled. The world became a blur of light and rain. I landed hard on the freighter roof, pain shooting up my leg, but I was alive. Leary stared at me, eyes huge. You jumped? Yeah, I groaned. Regretting it already. For a second the tension cracked and she laughed. Not the polite giggle from before, but real breathless laughter that bounced off the metal and into the storm. You're insane. Tiny advantage, I said, mimicking her tone. She punched my arm playfully, still smiling despite the tears on her cheeks. See, I said. Before noon. We huddled behind a cargo container as the freighter drifted farther from the towers. Drones swarmed above, scanning. She looked at me, trembling from cold and adrenaline. You didn't have to follow. Yeah, I said softly. But you'd just get lost without someone to argue with. Her voice dropped. You could still turn back and miss watching you almost break galactic law again? No chance. For a long moment, she just looked at me. Then she whispered, Thank you, human. The freighter banked sharply, lights flashing. Alarms echoed. We'd been spotted. Larry's hand found mine. If we make it through this, she said, I'll tell you why I really left home. Deal. And if we don't? Then you still owe me another laugh. She smiled through her fear. The city grew smaller behind us, a storm of light and metal fading into the dark horizon. For the first time, I realized she wasn't the one who needed saving tonight. Maybe we both did. The freighter drifted through the upper atmosphere like a tired whale, its engines humming against the endless hum of the city below. Dawn hadn't broken yet, but the edge of the world was already glowing faint blue, promising a day that neither of us was ready for. Leary sat on the deck beside me, her knees pulled to her chest, eyes half closed. In the faint light, the pale patterns along her skin pulsed gently, like her heartbeat was visible. It would have been peaceful if we weren't fugitives clinging to a piece of flying scrap metal. So, I said finally, any chance you have a plan that doesn't end with us being vaporized? She peeked one eye open. Maybe, but it's 85% hope and 15% caffeine. Those are terrible odds. They're my odds, she said, grinning faintly. Below us, the megacity fell away into the gray of the upper clouds. Beyond them, stars flickered through the thinning haze, and for a moment, it almost looked like freedom. Then the freighter shuddered, alarms warbling in a language neither of us spoke. Lyrie frowned. They tagged the ship. Collectors? She nodded. Tracking beacon. We need my pod. You mean the empathy reactor? My ship, she corrected, sitting up. It responds to my emotions. If I can link with it again, I can shut the beacon down. But we'll need to jump. I looked over the railing. Clouds swirled beneath us. I just did jump once. Then you're experienced, she said brightly. We climbed down into the maintenance hatch. The freighters hum louder here, air thick with machine oil. Lyrie's small frame moved easily through the narrow corridors. She tossed me a glance over her shoulder. You humans are built like cargo crates. How do you even fit through doors? Evolution, I said, ducking under a pipe. We adapted to sarcasm first, then tight spaces. She chuckled softly, but her voice shook. I don't want them to find us, human. Then let's make sure they don't. We reached the bottom platform, where the ship's outer hull was only a few meters above the clouds. The pod blinked faintly below, silver and waiting. You go first, I said. She shook her head. You'll just hesitate. Humans always overthink. And before I could argue, she leapt. Again, I followed, of course. The wind tore at my jacket and the clouds swallowed us whole. Then the ship appeared beneath us, hatch open, lights pulsing with that strange empathic rhythm. Leary landed gracefully. I crashed. Standard procedure. Inside, her pod felt alive. The walls shimmered faintly with every breath she took, the control surfaces rearranging themselves around her touch. "Does this thing breathe?" I asked. "It listens," she said simply. "It feels what I feel." I wanted to say that sounded terrifying, but then the interior dimmed to a gentle blue, like it was trying to calm her down. Maybe it really did. She pressed her palms to the core console. "I can dampen the beacon, but I'll need time. Keep the scanners open." "On it." I slid into the co-pilot seat, well, half seat, half puddle of light, and tried to look competent. Outside, the radar pings flashed red. The collectors were fanning out through the sky. "Leary," I said, "how many ships can they send?" "Depends how much they hate freedom," she muttered. "Probably a lot, then." Her mouth curved faintly. "Human, you always make jokes when you're scared?" "Only when I'm terrified." The ship lurched. Lights flickered. Leary winced, clutching her chest. "What's wrong?" "They're pulling the connection." "My ship, she's feeling their call." I frowned. "It's alive enough to be pulled?" She was built from a living lattice, part of our species' empathic field. When I fled, she followed. "But they're trying to overwrite her emotions with mine." "That sounds invasive." She met my eyes, serious now. "It's slavery, human, the same kind I ran from." For once, I didn't have a joke. The radar blipped again, closer now. One collector ship cutting through the cloud layer, searchlights scanning. "Time's up," I said. "They've got us. Almost done. Just keep them away." "Do I look like an anti-air cannon?" "Distract them." I sighed, muttered something impolite about alien optimism, and toggled the comms. "Hey, metalheads." "You lost a receipt or something?" The channel crackled. "Unregistered vessel, power down immediately." I glanced at Leary. "They're polite." "Should we power down?" Her only answer was a glare. The collector ship fired a warning shot. The hull rattled. The pod shrieked like it was in pain. Leary cried out, pressing harder against the console. "Almost! Almost!" The light around her flared bright white, and for a heartbeat, everything went silent. The radar went blank. "They can't see us," she whispered. I severed the link. I exhaled slowly, only now realizing I'd been holding my breath. "Nice work." She sank back against the seat, exhausted. "It's temporary. They'll find another way." "Then we'll keep running," I said. "You, me, and your emotional spaceship." That earned a faint laugh. "You're a strange human." Compliment taken. For a while, we drifted through the high sky, hidden from every scanner. The ship hummed softly, like it was breathing along with us. Leary leaned back, eyes half closed, her voice softer now. "When I was small," she said, "they told us that empathy was a gift, that we could feel everything, every joy, every sorrow of the world around us. But when they built the reactors, it became a curse. They used our emotions to keep the lights on. That's why you ran?" I said. She nodded. "I wanted to feel for myself, even if it hurts." The hum deepened around her, the walls shimmering gold for a moment. The ship agreed. I looked at her, tiny, tired, defiant. "You know, Leary, humans aren't much better. We build machines to do our feeling for us. Screens, feeds, distractions." She turned to me, smiling weakly. "Maybe that's why you and I understand each other. Because we're both bad at being happy. Because we're both trying anyway." For a long moment, the world outside faded. It was just the two of us and a ship that felt too much. The calm didn't last. A sharp ping jolted the console. Leary's eyes widened. "They're not tracking by beacon anymore. They're tracking by me." "What?" "They can feel my resonance, my emotions. They built the collectors with partial empathic sensors. If I panic, they can lock on. So don't panic." She gave me a look. "Easy for you to say." "Okay then," I said, leaning back, forcing a grin. "Let's do the opposite. You're not scared. You're having the time of your life. You're on an adventure with a very charming human who jumps off buildings for you. Despite everything," she snorted. "Charming? Debatable. But funny," I said. "You laughed before noon again." The sensors flickered and stayed blank. Her laughter had broken the resonance. She stared at me, amazed. How did you?" "Apparently bad jokes save lives." Leary's smile softened into something quieter. "Human. Thank you." She leaned her head lightly against my shoulder, the ship's hum matching her heartbeat again. "I was right," she whispered. "You do blink too much." "Yeah?" I said. "At least now I've got something worth blinking at." Outside, the dawn finally broke. Clouds blazed gold. The pod soared higher, escaping the city's reach. For the first time since I'd met her, Leary looked peaceful. "Where to now?" I asked. "Somewhere quiet," she said. "Where no one will try to use us." "Us?" She smiled. "You fixed my ship. You're part of her resonance now. You can't get rid of me, human." "Figures," I said, shaking my head. "You teased me for a day and now I'm property." She laughed again, bright and real. "At least you're free property." We drifted toward the rising sun, two silhouettes in a ship that glowed like it was alive. Somewhere behind us, the city stirred and the collectors regrouped. But for now, for one stolen morning, we had peace. And the tiny alien girl who'd teased me all day finally smiled, not to hide, but because she meant it. The sky cracked open with gold light, the kind of sunrise that made even broken things look divine. Leary leaned forward against the glass, her breath fogging the canopy. "It's beautiful," she whispered. I didn't have the heart to tell her it was radiation scattering off debris. For that moment, I wanted to believe the light meant something. She turned to me, her white silver hair glinting in the cockpit glow. "Your son feels impatient." "Yeah," I said. "That's the polite word for it." She smirked. "Impatient. Like you." The pod floated quiet for a while, the hum of recycled air filling the silence. For the first time in days, there was no screaming alarm, no collectors tearing through the comms. Just her and me, orbiting above a storm belt that looked like a living ocean. She was sitting cross-legged, reading the labels on the rations like they were ancient prophecies. "Apple flavor," she read aloud, wrinkling her nose. "It smells like boiled metal and disappointment. That's what we call an authentic Earth breakfast." Leary bit into it anyway and made a dramatic choking sound. "You humans survived on this?" "Barely. Some say the food killed more people than the wars." She laughed so hard she nearly dropped the wrapper, and I found myself watching her more than I should have, especially the way her laughter carried warmth into the small, cold cabin. "Don't stare," she teased, catching my gaze. "Empathy fields make that feel weird. Can't help it." "You glow when you laugh." "Stop saying things like that," she said, cheeks flushing violet. "You'll make me malfunction," I grinned. "You started the teasing, remember?" She shot me a look that was half challenge, half something else. "Careful, human." "I'm still faster." We fell into a rhythm after that. Her fixing the ship's controls, me pretending to understand them. Every so often she'd lean too close while reaching for a switch, her shoulder brushing mine, her hair leaving faint static sparks on my neck. She'd pretend not to notice. I definitely did. Peace, however, is a fragile species. It doesn't survive long in orbit. It started as a flicker on the console, one soft pulse, steady as a heartbeat. Leary froze. The glow from her hands dimmed instantly. That signal. It's not random. The screen pulsed again, faint, then stronger. "What is it?" I asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be good. Her lips tightened. "It's a summons. From the empathy network. Her people. The ones who'd been hunting her since she defected." I reached over her shoulder and killed the receiver. "Can we block it?" "If I try, they'll triangulate instantly. It's designed to lure us into answering. So it's a trap? For me." She looked away, eyes glassy with reflection. "If I respond, they'll come. If I don't, they'll send something worse." The pod rattled as the signal intensified. It wasn't sound exactly, more like pressure in the bones. The empathy field around Leary began to pulse faintly, responding to it against her will. "Leary," I said, "they're calling you home." Her voice cracked when she answered, "I don't have a home anymore." Something in me twisted at that. I leaned back, rubbing my face. "Okay, we need a third option." She gave me a wary look. "There isn't one." "There always is," I said, pointing at the console. "We answer them, but we lie," she blinked. "Lie to a psychic network." "Yeah, human specialty." "We invented social media." Her expression flickered, halfway between disbelief and admiration. "You are dangerous." "I'm just improvising." "That's what makes you dangerous." We spent the next hour rerouting circuits, splicing data lines with tools that weren't meant for delicate work. The pod's interior lights turned amber, then purple, as we overloaded the transmitters. Leary traced runes in the air with her fingers, weaving interference patterns like a language of light. I couldn't understand it, but it was beautiful. When she was done, the air shimmered faintly around her. "We'll send them an echo," she said softly. "Something they'll chase far away from us. Perfect. Let's make them think we died heroically somewhere else." She looked at me with a faint, tender smile. You really think about death a lot. Only on weekdays. She laughed under her breath and leaned closer to the console, her hair brushing my arm again. The scent of ozone and some alien flower filled the air. The transmission beam flared to life, humming through the hull. Coordinates set, she said. They'll believe we crashed into the southern belt. Good. They'll waste days searching dust. For a moment, everything was still. Then the signal died. We waited. Nothing. Larry slumped back into her seat, exhaling slowly. It worked. You doubted me? Yes, she said flatly. Constantly. Fair. I grinned, but inside I felt something heavier, like relief trying not to look like it cared too much. Outside, the sunrise deepened into a molten red arc. The pod drifted quietly above the atmosphere, the world below slowly turning beneath us. Lyrie leaned her head on the back of her seat. You know, she said softly, if I didn't know better, I'd say you're enjoying this chaos. I enjoy not dying, I said. It's a rare hobby these days. You make fear sound funny. Only way to survive it. She glanced sideways at me, her voice lower now. You'd make a terrible empath. Why? You hide everything behind jokes. Hey, humor is emotional armor. And what happens when someone takes that armor off? I hesitated. Depends who's doing the taking. The words hung there between us. For a moment, all the background hum vanished. The only sound was her breathing, soft and careful. Then she looked away first, pretending to adjust a dial that didn't need adjusting. We should get moving, she said, her voice quieter, before the fake crash data expires. Right, I said, pretending not to feel whatever that moment had been. I fired the engines, gentle burn, just enough to move us into shadow. The stars blinked into view like eyes opening in the dark. From somewhere deep inside the pod, a faint echo reverberated, almost too soft to hear. Lyrie froze. That wasn't me, she whispered. What do you mean? The network answered back, her gaze locked on mine, wide and uncertain. They think we're dead, but they're sending something to confirm. I swallowed hard, gripping the controls. Something like what? Her fingers trembled against the console. A retrieval drone. It'll scan for bodies. So, we fake ours. How? I smiled faintly. Simple. We crash another ship first. Lyrie blinked, realizing I was serious. You're insane. Statistically, yes. But statistically, it's also our best shot. She groaned, rubbing her temples. Humans are chaos with legs. Thanks. You're starting to get us. She laughed weakly and looked back out the canopy. The reflected light painted her silver skin in gold hues. You keep doing this, she said. Doing what? Making danger feel less like doom and more like adventure. Guess that's the charm, I said. She looked at me for a long moment before whispering, You're impossible. Good thing you're here to prove me wrong. Her laughter filled the cabin again. Quiet, genuine, tired. Outside, the first retrieval drone streaked across the upper clouds like a falling star, and she didn't notice the single tear that slipped down her cheek. I did. But I didn't say anything, because if I'd spoken, I might have told her the truth, that I'd rather burn with her in that pod than ever let them take her away. The console flickered again, and she reached for my hand without thinking. Just one brief, trembling touch. For the first time since the crash, the universe felt small enough to hold. The first drone appeared as a streak of silver cutting across the twilight edge of the clouds. Lyrie's hand tensed in mine before she realized she was still holding it. She pulled away slowly, pretending to check the console, but the pulse between us lingered. It's scanning for wreckage, she said. Good thing we're about to give it some. The plan was as bad as every plan I'd ever come up with. Simple, stupid, and probably suicidal. There was an old cargo skiff drifting in orbit a few thousand kilometers away. If we could remote ignite its reactor core and sync its ID signature to ours, the retrieval drone would think it found our remains. Lyrie frowned at the flickering hollow. You can't just fake an identity chip. They're quantum-coded. I can, I said. I just can't guarantee the explosion won't vaporize half the hemisphere. That's comforting. I'm all about reassurance. She rolled her eyes, but the corner of her mouth twitched. You humans cope with doom by flirting with it. Sometimes it flirts back. We burned toward the derelict skiff. The glow from the sunrise fell away, replaced by the deep cold blue of open space. Leary floated beside me in the narrow cabin, her movements weightless and precise. Every time she brushed past, static flickered across the skin of my forearm like electricity pretending to be affection. When we reached visual range, the old ship looked like a skeleton, ribs of metal, hull half peeled by micrometeors. Perfect corpse material. Ready? I asked. Ready, she said softly. Then after a beat, if this fails, I want you to know something. Save it, I said. We'll have time to argue later. She smiled sadly. You really are afraid of feelings. Only the ones that might actually matter. We detonated the skiff's core with a short pulse. Light bloomed silently, scattering shards of metal into orbit. For a heartbeat, it was beautiful. An artificial sunrise. A lie bright enough to blind gods. Lyrie closed her eyes and whispered, Goodbye, Leary of the empathy field. Goodbye who? She died in that explosion. She opened her eyes again, meeting mine. Now I'm just Lyrie, the girl who owes a human her life. Debt accepted, I said. Payable in continued survival. The retrieval drone drifted into view minutes later, scanning the wreckage. We cut power completely, holding our breath. My heart thudded so loud I was sure the drone would hear it. It passed within 50 meters of the pod, shining a pale beam that traced over our hull, then veered off toward the fake debris. Lyrie exhaled shakily. It worked, I smiled. Of course it did. We're professionals at pretending to be dead. Speak for yourself, she said, smirking. I'm still glowing. She wasn't wrong. The stress made her field flare faintly, soft light curling from her shoulders like mist. I reached out without thinking and brushed it with my fingers. It felt like warmth distilled into touch. She startled but didn't pull away. Sorry, I murmured. She tilted her head. You always apologize for things you mean. Force of habit. Her eyes softened. Then stop meaning them. Something about that made my chest ache. Before I could answer, the console beeped. Another signal, this one faint, rhythmic. Lyrie leaned forward, her face draining of color. It's not the collectors, she said. It's survivors. Survivors of what? My kind. Defectors like me. She hesitated. They're trapped on the outer edge of the belt. That's why the network wanted me. They needed my signal to locate them. So we saved ourselves and doomed them. Her silence was the confirmation I didn't want. I rubbed my jaw. Then we undoomed them. Leary blinked. You can't save everyone. I'm human, I said. We're allergic to can't, she laughed softly. You're ridiculous. I get that a lot. We turned the pod toward the outer belt. The view was hypnotic. Rings of storm and lightning curling like veins of a living planet. As we descended, turbulence shook the pod. Lyrie reached out instinctively and grabbed my arm. If this kills us, she said, I want you to know something real this time. Now you're just tempting fate. Then let me. Her voice dropped. I didn't tease you to annoy you, human. I did it because it kept me from feeling afraid. I glanced at her, her expression open and fragile in a way I'd never seen. And now? Now I'm still teasing you, she said, smiling faintly. But for different reasons. Lightning arced across the atmosphere, casting us in flashes of white. I laughed despite the fear gnawing in my gut. You picked a hell of a time to get honest. Honesty is best when it can't be followed by consequences, she said, deadpan. That's not how humans work, clearly. You're flying into a death storm for strangers. They're not strangers, I said quietly. They're yours. That makes them ours. She stared at me for a long second, eyes luminous in the flickering light. Then she whispered, You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because I might start believing you. We plunged through the storm layer, alarm screaming. The pod jolted hard and she fell against me, her hands gripping my chest. For a moment we were pressed close, the cabin shaking around us. Still think I flirt with doom? I said through a grin. She laughed breathlessly. You are doom. The instruments cleared briefly. Through the static we caught sight of 3 faint beacons blinking below, tiny distress signals in a sea of clouds. Leary gasped. They're alive. Then let's not let them stay surprised. We cut through the atmosphere, plasma trails painting fire behind us. As we neared the surface, she reached for my hand again. This time she didn't let go. Human? Yeah. Whatever happens next, don't stop joking. Not planning to. Good, she said softly. Because if you stop, I'll think we're really dying this time. The pod hit the upper pressure wall like a hammer through glass. Everything turned white, and in that silence between lightning strikes, her voice trembled through the comms. You make chaos feel like hope. The pod came out of the clouds spinning. For a few seconds, everything was light, noise, and inertia, until the stabilizers finally kicked in and threw us hard against our harnesses. The whole cabin glowed from residual heat. I could taste copper and ozone. Lyrie was coughing beside me, hair wild, cheeks flushed. You are completely insane. Compliments will get you everywhere, I muttered, wrestling the controls back. We almost died. Almost dying is the best kind of alive. Humans are defective, she said, voice shaking between laughter and hysteria. And you're welcome, I shot back. Through the smoke-tinted viewport, the storm peeled away to reveal the surface below, an endless ocean of clouds and lightning that glowed from within, like a world constantly on fire. There, Lyrie whispered, pointing. Amid the violent glow, 3 faint orbs flickered in rhythmic sequence, the distress beacons of her kind. We landed, or crashed elegantly, on a floating ridge of metallic debris. The air outside shimmered with static discharges, but her field neutralized most of it when she stepped out. She looked almost divine against the electric sky, tiny figure framed by cosmic madness. Stay behind me, I said. She smirked. And miss your heroic moment? Never. We climbed down a slope of twisted metal and found the source of the signal, a broken habitat pod half buried in crystalline dust. Inside were 3 beings, smaller than Lyrie, paler, their empathy fields flickering like dying candles. When they saw her, one reached out weakly and whispered something in a language I didn't understand. Lyrie's composure cracked. She dropped to her knees and answered softly, her words trembling. They were my students, she murmured to me. They ran when I did. I thought they were gone. I crouched beside her, trying not to feel like an intruder in a sacred moment. You found them, I said. That counts for something. She nodded, but her eyes glistened. They're fading. They've been feeding on each other's empathy fields just to stay conscious. It's cruel. Without thinking, I pressed my palm against hers. Take mine. Her eyes widened. You don't understand what that means. Doesn't matter. You could burn out your mind. Then at least it'll go doing something that isn't stupid for once. She stared at me for a long moment, then whispered, You really don't know how to stop saving things, do you? Nope, I said. Chronic human condition. She exhaled and placed her hand over mine. The air between us ignited, not with fire, but with sensation. It was like falling through warmth, laughter, and ache all at once. The world blurred. I felt her heart beating in time with mine, her memories brushing against the edges of my thoughts. A childhood beneath bioluminescent trees, the first time she saw stars from orbit, the terror of defection, the loneliness afterward, and beneath it all, my voice in her memory, laughing, teasing, calling her tiny. When it ended, I gasped for breath. The 3 survivors were glowing faintly again, stabilized. Lyrie swayed on her feet, eyes shining with tears and reflected light. You gave them hope, she whispered. You gave me more than that. Add it to my growing list of questionable decisions, I said weakly. She laughed, wiping her cheeks. If your people knew what you just did, they'd probably sue me for violating interspecies health protocols. You'd still joke, she said, shaking her head. You'd be dying, and you'd still joke. It's part of my charm. The survivors were too weak to move far, so we carried them back to the pod. Lyrie worked silently, wrapping them in warmth fields. I pretended to check diagnostics, but mostly watched her hands, steady, graceful, utterly alien. When she finally sat beside me, her voice was small. They'll live. Because of you. Because of us, I corrected. She looked at me, then smiled faintly. You keep doing that. Doing what? Making us sound like it's always been there. I leaned back against the wall, exhausted. Maybe it has. She stared at me for a long moment. Then, quietly, she said, Back on my world, touch was sacred. We didn't touch unless we meant forever. I met her gaze. Then maybe you shouldn't have grabbed my hand during a lightning storm. Her lips curved upward. Maybe I should have done it sooner. Outside, the storm began to fade. The atmosphere above cleared enough for starlight to reach through. The retrieval drone's signal vanished entirely. It must have confirmed our death. We were officially ghosts. Larry leaned against my shoulder, a tiny sigh escaping her. Ghosts can't fall in love, you know. Then we'll have to be terrible ghosts. She laughed softly, closing her eyes. For a while, we just sat there in the dim cabin, surrounded by sleeping survivors and fading static. I thought about everything we'd survived, the chase, the storm, the lies, and realized that somewhere between near-death experiences and bad jokes, something had changed. She tilted her head up slightly. Human, yeah? Thank you. For everything. For being ridiculous. For not giving up. For not letting me disappear. I smiled. Someone's got to make sure the universe doesn't get boring. She chuckled. You've succeeded. We fell quiet again. Her head rested lightly against me, and the pod hummed gently, orbit decay slow and steady. You know, I said finally, if we ever make it back to Earth, you'll have to try real food. Not those apple-flavored regrets. She smiled without opening her eyes. If it tastes like you cook, I'll risk it. Hey, I make great synthetic pasta. That's not food. That's punishment. Her laughter filled the small space again, soft and human and alien all at once. Outside, dawn rolled across the cloud sea. The survivors slept peacefully. And for the first time since the crash, Leary wasn't glowing from fear. She was glowing because she wanted to. I reached up and turned off the navigation lights, leaving only the stars. So what now, I asked. She murmured drowsily. Now we disappear. Build something new. Together. Tiny alien girl, are you asking me to run away with you? She opened one eye, grinning. I already did. The hum of the engines faded into silence. She reached for my hand again, fingers weaving through mine. No more teasing this time, just warmth. And somewhere in that endless sky, between the quiet laughter and the promise of rebuilding, I realized humanity hadn't just saved an alien. It had found a mirror. She squeezed my hand gently. You're still impossible, human. Yeah, I whispered. But now I'm your impossible. The stars winked, the storm below dimmed, and the tiny alien girl who'd once teased me all day now slept against my shoulder, breathing softly. Finally home. The end. If you'd fight storms, defy networks, and rewrite destiny for someone who made chaos feel like love, share this story and stay tuned for the next cosmic adventure.